So let's talk today about where your website is weak. As performance marketers, we're driven to drive for conversions, whether a conversion is a sale or it's a lead or it's some other kind of action. We have to figure out a way to drive for the most amount of actions possible based on the amount of traffic that we have, and that's the bottom line. And there's three ways that your website, or there's three components to your website that can create conversions. And basically there's three ways that you can change your website in order to increase conversions. So there's only really three categories. And the first one is what everybody puts most of their time, energy, and effort into. And they, for the most part, completely neglect number 2 and 3. So it's in number 2 and 3 that you're going to see that there's a substantial amount of improvement that basically almost everybody is overlooking. So number 1 here is content. Content means what your website says, what images it has, what calls to action it has, what the colors are, or the backgrounds or the images. And almost everybody focuses, like I said, they focus the majority of their time, energy, and effort on what the website looks like. Number 2 is speed. If your website is slow as shit, you can imagine that you're not going to get a whole lot of conversions. You can have the greatest content in the world, picture perfect images, high resolution, but if the website doesn't load fast, you aren't going to get conversions, and I'm going to go more into this in a minute. Number 3 is functionality. So functionality means, does your website work? And the problem here is that when it comes to number 2 and number 3, most marketers assume that their website's fast because it's hosted on Amazon or behind Cloudflare or something like that. They assume it's fast, and they assume that it works on all the devices and connection speeds of the users who come to the site. The problem with that is that those are assumptions, and we know from our tests basically that speed, what most people will do is they will test their website on a high-speed connection, and they'll use something like GTmetrix, and GTmetrix will say, hey, your website loads under 2 seconds. Awesome. That's fast, right? The problem is usually those tests are done on a high-speed connection. Most people, unfortunately, the average internet user is not on a high-speed connection. Sure, there's a certain percentage of people who actually are they're on their laptop, close to their Wi-Fi router, and their internet connection is solid, and their neighbors aren't streaming, 12 high-resolution movies at one time. We all know our Wi-Fi slows down. So the average internet speed is not high speed. And the problem is that there's a substantial portion of your users and your visitors who are on slow speed connections, meaning people who are on 1 bar of 4G service or crappy Wi-Fi. They're in a coffee shop sharing Wi-Fi with 100 other people. The back room of their house where there's the Wi-Fi connection is just not that strong. There's a substantial portion of your people who are on low-speed connections. And when they visit your website and it takes them 10 seconds to load your website, what do you think they're going to do? 20-30% of people in your user base is on low-speed connections. If your site loads, if it takes longer than 2-3 seconds to load, they're gone. So this is a big problem. People don't think it's a problem, but it's a huge problem because it's 20-30% of your user base, depending on your traffic, it's on slow speed connections. And if your website takes 10 seconds to load on there, you're screwed. I don't care what it loads at. Almost everybody's website loads pretty quickly on a high speed connection. That's pretty much a given. Most websites out there will load at least under 4 seconds on a high-speed connection. And a lot of them will load under 2 seconds. And that's the problem with GTmetrix or a lot of the other test tools out there is they will test on a high-speed connection. And you go, great, my website's fast. Well, sure, it's fast for people who are on fast connections. But that 20 to 30% of people who are on slow-speed connections, you're basically losing them in most cases. Because I see most of the websites that I audit for slow speed connections, they're 10 seconds or longer before the website is interactive. So that means that it takes at least 10 seconds before a person on a slow speed connection can do anything with your website. That's a big problem. It's a real big problem. And number 3 is functionality. And like I said earlier, people make lots of assumptions that their website's fast, and they assume that it also functions across all devices, and it's just not true. Problems like iPhone 5S, if any of you guys are still out there on iPhone 5S, happens to be, depending on the traffic, about 20% of Apple phones are still iPhone 5S. This phone is like it's like the battle tank of iPhones. Like, it sticks around. I mean, it's been like 5-6 years at least since this phone was released, and there's a lot of them out there. And I have to tell you that in a substantial number of websites that we audit, they've got issues with iPhone 5S functionality-wise. Problems like how video loads on iPhone 5S, how certain buttons and certain JavaScript don't work on iPhone 5S. And it's 20% of essentially Apple devices is iPhone 5S. We're not even going into Samsung. There's additional issues there. It really depends on what your traffic breakdown looks like. And if you're heavy, like some people are really heavy on Apple traffic, then this becomes a big issue because 20% of it is still iPhone 5S and your website doesn't work. So most people assume that their website just works on all devices, and it's just not true. It really depends on your traffic breakdown, where your problem devices are, and it requires auditing your traffic flow and then testing your website functionality on those devices. And there's a number of tools to do that are helpful in doing that. But the problem is people just assume that everything's okay when it's not. So what's the bottom line here? Let's lump these two guys together, and let's just assume that your content is on point. Content's great. Website's converting, you're profitable on your campaigns if you're so lucky. Let's just talk about the last two, what's available on just these two, speed and functionality. Majority of cases I see, and majority of websites I audit, there is a minimum, and this is a bare minimum, of 25% to be gained in conversions, minimum, by improving speed and improving functionality across your devices. Minimum. The top end of this, you can put a 0 on the end of it. Some of our clients, over 250%, just from speed and functionality. So, where your website is weak, these two areas, and notice this is 2/3 of the equation here, right? 2 out of 3. There's only really 3 things that make a website convert visitors into sales or leads or conversion. There's only three things: content, speed, and functionality. And most people completely forget about these last 2. So there's a substantial amount of improvement that can be had in here. And yes, does it take some specialized knowledge to make a website load really fast, even on slow connections? Yeah, It takes specialized knowledge to do that. It takes specialized knowledge to build your website so it'll actually function on iPhone 5S if you've got video or other JavaScript that 5S just doesn't understand. Yeah, it takes specialized knowledge to do that. But we're able to do that for our clients. So what we're offering is I'm doing a free website audit. And it applies for anybody who's got a website basically on a pulse. Where this really comes into play and where it becomes highly important is for paid traffic. When you're running substantial paid traffic and you can get, let's just take this 0 back off of here, just make it 25%. 25% is, I would say, if I averaged out all our clients' initial margins on their paid traffic, it's probably a bit less than 25%. So they spend $75 on traffic and they get $100 in revenue, or basically 25% margin. Or they spend $65 in traffic and $10 in profit, or $10 in product costs. They've got $75 in cost and they've got $100 in revenue. So they got basically a 25% margin. If you're lucky, you're running it at 25% or higher. Very few times I see much higher than that on paid traffic. So when we're talking about increasing the conversions 25% based on increasing speed and functionality, this here is enough to double the profits of a lot of campaigns out there. Additional 25%. Now, if you're so lucky to add 0 to this, then obviously your profits are 10x. But that's not usually what happens. What usually happens is we get somewhere between 25 and 30%. Let me just take the circle off here. Here's what usually happens. We usually get 25 to 30% here. And what do they do is, yes, this improves profits substantially. But what our clients will usually do is they'll go out and now with this additional 25 to 30%, now they can buy more traffic. They can go buy traffic from places that they couldn't buy traffic from before because it was just too expensive or they were break even. They can now scale campaigns that were break even before. Now they're profitable and they can scale up the spend on them. And number 3, if I just charted these out here, one would be new traffic. New. 2 would be scale. Scale your break-even campaigns. And 3 is bid higher. What if you could outbid your competition? How much more traffic could you get? Same campaign. Let's say you increase your bids 15%. You're still gonna have additional profit here. You're just taking some profit back out of these additional conversions. What if you can increase your bids 15%? We've seen a number of places where the competition is so heavy and everybody's like tapped out. Like everybody's like bidding as much as they can, and the bid is at a high point where just like there's 2 or 3 bidders who can't seem to beat each other, right? They're all bidding for the same traffic. They've all got similar margins. And if you're one of them, you're just like trying every day to outbid them and keep your campaign profitable at the same time. But what if you had an additional 15, maybe even 20%? Maybe on some days you want to kick your competition's ass and you lift your bid 30% and they can't even touch you. And they're going, man, I tested increasing the bids 15, 20%. I still can't get traffic because you're over here, you got 30% more margin than everybody else because everybody else forgot about these 2 things. So these 3 benefits here are pretty huge 25 to 30% might not seem like a lot, but it's 25 to 30% that basically nobody else has because they've forgotten about these two things and they didn't put time, energy, and effort into them. And you can do this. You can go buy new traffic in places that other people can't buy traffic. You can scale campaigns that right now are just break even, and you can increase your bids to get a heck of a lot more traffic. In a lot of cases, we see that there's a tipping point. All of the bids have kind of tapped out, and there's like 3 or 4 or maybe 5 bidders who are sharing all of the traffic or the most part of it. And you come in and you can bid even 5% or 10% more than everybody else. You get all the traffic pretty much that 5 people were splitting before. Now you have access to all of it. You couldn't get but 20% of it before, and now you can get like 80% of it. So it's huge, huge deal. So improve your content, absolutely, but don't make the assumption that your website is fast and that it's functional. And even when people tell me that their website's fast, we still find, usually in most cases, massive opportunity for improvement just because of the level of testing that we've done and over, just millions and millions of clicks and our own campaigns and our clients' campaigns. We've got some tricks up our sleeve, both on speed and functionality, to push this 25 to 30%. Like I said, potentially add a zero to it over time. Takes some time to make that much more conversions. But in a lot of cases, 50 to 75% is doable within a few months. 25 to 30% is usually doable within 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how quickly you can act on it. So, like I said, I'm doing free website audits. Even if your site isn't getting that much traffic, I'm not going to turn you away. Obviously, we offer this as a service, this increase in conversions as a service. It's really, the service is really a fit for people who are spending $100K plus a month on traffic, $100,000 plus a month, or doing at least $100,000 in revenue from their site. That's where the service really, just the numbers start to make sense for it, and it's the gains and the returns are worthwhile. But even if your site's not doing 100K a month, send it over to me. I'll take a look at it. In a lot of cases, I can tell you some easy ways to increase your conversions without us doing any work for you. Just give you a couple tips. And sometimes that makes the difference for a campaign that's maybe doing $20,000 a month in revenue or traffic spend, going from that up to 100K plus. A lot of times it's just a couple tweaks away from being able to buy that traffic for that higher price and getting more of it. And then, hey, then we can talk about, possibly working together. So send me your sites. I'll audit them. I'll let you know what you're missing here. I have to tell you, it will probably surprise you in almost every case. It absolutely surprises people how much they're losing just from speed and functionality. So make it a great day. Send me your sites, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.